Okay, so these are the new cards that were just announced on October 22nd. I'm a little bit late, I slept in, but let's jump into it. I'm basically going to go over the overview and rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, give a brief explanation why. So, Kiri the Chosen Elune. It's a 4-mana 2/2 with Battlecry, add a Solar Eclipse, and a Lunar Eclipse to your hand. So it's not doing one or the other, or choose one. It's giving you both, which is already really strong. Not to mention the fact that these two cards are insane. 2 mana, deal 3 damage. Next spell this turn costs 2 less. Essentially, it's a free 3 mana. And then Solar Eclipse, your next spell this turn casts twice. This one's insane. Like, especially with Druid, you could double activate some choose one spells if you finished your quest. You can double activate just like powerful cards in general. Even if it's something small and weak like Nature Studies, getting 2 cards could be really, really strong off of that, and reducing cards by 2 again because of how the Studies works. And there are probably other cards I'm not thinking of. I don't think it works well with Ramp, because if you want to play this with Overgrowth on turn 6, like, it works and you go to 10 mana, but I feel like you could just play Overgrowth, go to 8, and save Solar Eclipse. But, like, point is, there are a lot of combos that you can do. I think this is a 9 out of 10. And by the way, 10 out of 10 I think is a card that's so strong it should probably get nerfed. 9 out of 10 is the strongest that I think would be actually balanced. And I think Kiri's a balanced card because it is a 4-mana 2/2. It's not, like, also extremely fast. It's got a good balance to it, and its stats are bad, so it's a really weak turn 4 play, and it is 4 mana to get this sick effect, but the effect is pretty sick. And with all the new cards coming out, and the fact that some of these things seem to be going a little bit slower, because there are a lot of late game big win conditions, I could see this card actually being legitimately good. Into aggro, it'll probably be weak, though. Next is the Darkmoon Rabbit. Now, for flavor alone, I want to say this card's like a 9 or 10 out of 10. For flavor alone. Trust me, I love Monty Python on the Holy Grail. My most successful video on this channel ever, with like 520,000 views, was a Nerf Holy Hand Grenade, because I thought the Holy Hand Grenade and the rabbit was the funniest thing ever. Right? And the fact that King Arthur couldn't count correctly was hilarious. I haven't watched that movie in forever. I probably should. Not important. And the fact that they're clearly alluding to that with the demon rabbit and the knight's helmet, I feel like that's hilarious, right? But the card itself is awful. Like, a 10 mana 1/1 that at best kills 2 minions or 3 minions is kind of weak, and that's not including positioning. So sometimes they'll put the taunt on the side and you can't kill everything off, and the fact that something might have Divine Shield, like into Paladin, this card is literally useless. I don't think it's very good. I think it's like a 2 out of 10. Like, it's got Poison and Rush and Cleave, so that's cool. But for 10 mana, it's not good enough. Like, sure, you can reduce it in Hunter and make multiple copies so you can wipe the board over and over again and maybe pump it up so it's a good card. But at 10 mana, it's just not cutting it for me. And it's an epic, so it's too expensive to just craft and experiment with. This is an easy 2 out of 10, maybe even 1. Like, it's awful. Cthulhu the Shattered. Now, this card has pieces that it breaks into, and let me just show you those pieces really quick. Those pieces are all 5-cost cards that essentially have an ability that is, you know, okay. Here's the picture real quick. I can just scroll down and get it. But the card as a whole, 10 mana, Battle Cry, deal 30 damage randomly split among all enemies, is pretty cool. Stats-wise, it's pretty weak. I'm not gonna lie. For a 10 mana card, but the fact that it gets to deal 30 damage is insane. These are the pieces. 5 mana, deal 7 damage randomly split among all enemies. It can do damage to the face. I don't think it's a very good card. I think all these pieces, except for Body of Cthulhu, are kind of bad. But Eye of Cthulhu, it's like a 4. Heart of Cthulhu, it's like a 4. Maw of Cthulhu, it's like a 4 because Assassinate doesn't really cut it in the meta anymore. A 5-mana 6/6 Taunt, though, that's like a 6 or 7. I think that this card's fine. So overall, on average, these pieces are like okay. Heart of Cthulhu is just a worse Hellfire that's fine. And definitely help you have an extra removal spell, but it's not going to be like game changing, and it's not as, like I said, good as Hellfire, some of the other 3 damage removal. 5 mana to just destroy a minion is pretty slow and weak. You don't even get like an invoke like Priest does. And Priest doesn't even use that invoke card anymore. that is 5 mana, kills something and invoke. It just doesn't even see any play. And then Eye of Cthulhu is fine, but it can deal damage to the face, which could be good, but at sometimes when you want to wipe the board, could also backfire. So overall, I don't think that the pieces are very good, but since Cthulhu is so strong, I think this is probably still like a 7 out of 10 card. It'll see play. And like Warlock, if you draw a ton of cards and get these cards more consistently, it'll be good. Not to mention the fact that it dilutes your deck, by the way, which doesn't affect Warlock that much. Which is why I think Warlock will do good, because if it dilutes your deck, you won't fatigue as often, as consistently. But you'll more likely draw the pieces. So I think that this would work really, really well in Warlock and give it a good late game win condition. And say you get this off of Quest, or you get one of the pieces off of once you finish your quest and you play it for free. I could see it being really, really good. You charge the Defiler. Battlecry, add copy of corrupted cards you've played this game to your hand. They cost 0, a 10 mana, 10/10. It's actually pretty strong. And let me just show you what a corrupted card looks like, just for reference. So corrupt basically says, if you play a card that costs more than this card, gain an added effect. So at first, it's deal 4, but once corrupted, upgrades in your hand after you play a card that costs more. So you're not going to be able to play this card till probably turn 6 or turn 5 if you coin a 5-drop out on turn 4 and then play this turn 5. But corrupted, deal 4 damage and then deal 2 damage. So you will get the buffed version, and there are more buffed versions in the game. Like this one, 3 mana, summon 5 Silverhand Recruits if it's upgraded, 5 mana, an 8/8 rush minion. I could see being quite strong, and if they cost 0, that'll be nuts. So I think that this card is a bit slow and makes me a little bit skeptical, but I think it's probably similar to Cthulhu, solid 7 or 8 out of 10. Just because of the fact that, like, if you get it out and you last to turn 10, it's insane. And if the meta slows down, a decent amount, I could see this card being actually, like, better and being a solid 8, because you'll have that time to get to your charge. But if it's like still a very aggro heavy meta and Soul Demon Hunter's still like a top tier deck and you just die on turn 6, I don't think Yasharge is actually going to cut it. But it really depends on the shape of the meta. Next is Silas Darkmoon. He's got 2 cards. Battlecry, choose a direction to rotate all minions, a 7 mana 4/4. Basically, it'll rotate this way clockwise or this way counterclockwise, and essentially you steal one of their minions and they steal one of your minions. But it's all based on your positioning and their positioning. I think this card is interesting. I just don't think it's that good. I think it's like a 6. I think it could be a 7 at lower ranks for people who don't position their minions exactly correctly, which means that sometimes you can steal a big minion and give them something weak. Also, if you steal a dormant minion so you can get their sick effect, that could also be pretty cool. But overall, kind of underwhelmed with this card. Obviously, I still think it's cool, and it might actually be good, and if someone positions badly, this can really take advantage of that. But like at higher ranks, especially where people will probably play well, I don't see this card being better than a 6, but at lower ranks, it's probably a 7. Next card, Yoge Saron. If you've cast 10 spells this game, spin the wheel. Now, let's just talk about the stupid wheel for a second. I surprisingly don't have that much problem with the wheel, and we'll get into it in a second, because the fact that you have to cast 10 spells to get it to activate. This card needs to have a lot of things already done to activate this card. It's specifically designed to be a late game card, and it's more of a comeback card once I show you the effects of the cards that you can get off of the wheel. So I don't actually have a problem with this. It's not like Puzzle Box, which you can just play on turn 10, no setup, and just drop it. It's not like, you know, Puzzle Box with Old Tortolan Pilgrim where you could play it on 8. Or you could play it for free with the 7 mana 4/4 that casts a free card, the Dragon Cast or whatever. Like, you can't cheese this guy out. It needs to meet certain requirements before you can play it. And sure, you'll probably meet those requirements because you'll have a deck specifically designed around this card. But if you have a deck specifically designed around this card, then it's fine, in my opinion, for it to be insane. However, I do have a little bit of an issue with it, and we'll get into the effects right now. Overall, I think Yoge Saron is probably an 8 or 9 out of 10 card. I think it's insane. I think it's nuts. But let's just where did it go? Let's just give you the context. So it's got 6 different outcomes. All of them have 19% except this one, which is 5. And 5 is basically end the game. Rod of Roasting casts Pyroblast randomly until a player dies. So obviously you can warp this, so statistically you'll probably win. Or at least have a better chance of winning. But it's not super likely to come out. And it could backfire on you. This card, oh, I don't like the fact that it has a 5% chance of just ending the game. But you know what? Fine. It's a small enough chance. It requires setup. And there are ways to play around it. Like if the opponent has a board of 5 minions and 20 health. And you have 1 minion and like 10 health. You're probably going to lose. So I find that this card is okay. It's a very comeback heavy kind of thing. Hand of Fate. Fill your hand with random spells. They cost 0 this turn. I don't feel like this card's that bad. It's basically like the puzzle box, except you get to choose where things go, and it's, you know, less than 10 cards a lot of the time, so that's fine. I don't really mind that too much. I think it's a solid card, and they cost 0 this turn, but that doesn't mean you can't, like, save it for a better opportunity to play on a future turn, especially if it's, like, a Blizzard or something, and they have nothing. Like, okay, fine. You can just play Blizzard on a future turn if they flood the board or something. Like, it's fine. Curse of Flesh, fill the board with random minions. Then give yours Rush, so you essentially have the opportunity to value trade into their minions, not to mention the fact that if they already have minions on the board, they don't get as much of a value out of the Curse of Flesh, so it's fine. I think that it's a cool play. I think that's a cool card. Mind Flayer, Goggles, take control of 3 random enemy minions. This card's kind of insane and is a huge tempo swing. Mystery Box, cast a random spell for every spell you've cast this game. I'm sorry if you can't see the last 2 cards. I will get rid of my face for a second real quick right here for you. Boom, I'm gone. But yeah. So essentially, if you had to cast at least 10 spells to get Yoge Saron anyway, this is minimum going to cast 10, if not more. And then Devouring Hunger, destroy all other minions, gain their health and attack. That's kind of insane. This is kind of like a better Twisting Nether. But again, it's only got a 19% chance of actually activating. So overall, I think this is like a 9 out of 10 card. The only reason I don't think it's a 10 is because of the fact that it does require a little bit of setup. It does. It really does. And even though it's busted and the effects are insane, it's random what effect you get. Maybe you get one of the effects that doesn't really help you very much, or an effect that helps you and wins you the game. Like, it can go in multiple different directions, honestly. N'Zoth, I think this is the worst old god. Battlecry, resurrect a friendly minion of each minion type. I just don't know how many minion types there are, and if you run a ton of different minion types, it's just going to, like, limit the synergy in your deck, and you're really just playing around this one thing. Like, hunters want to play beasts or dragons. They don't want to play beasts and dragons. That makes their synergies worse. And similar thing goes for some of the other classes like priest. You want dragon synergy sometimes. You don't want to run a ton of different like types of cards. So I personally don't like this card. I think that this one's like a 6 at best. Like, it'll probably find a way to get play, but I just don't think it's very good. It's a 10 mana 5/7, so if you don't have that many cards to resurrect, it could be kind of bad. I mean, I could see this working in some sort of demon deck the best. I think some of these cards work best in demon. Not only finish your quest and maybe get some free cards, but like resurrecting a giant demon, resurrecting a big minion, or a big dragon, and maybe 1 or 2 other things that you can fit in, and just play like a control warlock deck with some big minions to get them resurrected. Like, that could work, I'd say, but that's really one of the only decks I could see this really working in. So this is probably like a 6. Guess the weight. Draw a card. Guess if your next card costs more or less to draw it. I think this card's fantastic because, like, you have the opportunity to somehow, like, you know what's in your deck, right? So you have the opportunity to try to figure out what you're most likely to draw. And you can play a statistics game. You can look like, oh, I have, like, if I drew a 3-cost card, I've got, you know, 7 cards that cost more than 3 and 10 cards that cost less than 3 in my deck still, and several that cost 3. So in some cases, I just won't get it correctly at all. But if you run the statistics game, you can give yourself a more likely chance to draw 2 cards for 2 mana. I think this card's fun. I think this card's interesting. And I like it a lot, actually. I like this card a lot. I think it's a cool design. I think that it relies a little bit on skill and running a numbers game. And if you have the deck tracker, it'll just make this, like, a lot better of a card. Dunk Tank, we sneak peeked this one before. 4 mana, deal 4 damage, corrupt, then deal 2 damage to all enemy minions. I think that this card's fine. Oh, I didn't actually rate this card. Sorry. I think this card's like a 7. I think 2 mana draw 1.5 with like a, let's just say 50-50 chance is not bad. I'll rate it as 6. That seems relatively average to me, but I could see it seeing some play. I think that the Epic makes it a little bit worse because it makes it a little bit more difficult for free-to-play players to come across. So I'm going to say it's like a 6.5. Slight debuff just because of the fact that it's an Epic, but it's still fine. I'd like to see it played. I think it's cool. Dunk Tank, we just discussed this. I think that because of the fact Corrupt slows this down so much, I think that by turn 6, dealing 2 damage to all enemy minions is just going to be too weak. I think that if this was like deal 2 damage to all enemy minions for 4, and then Corrupt, deal 4 damage, that could be better. But because of how coding probably works, and the fact that the normal effect should probably be the one to choose the target, it makes sense that it's the thing that comes first. I just don't like the fact that the deal 2 damage to all enemy minions is so late. So I think this card's like a 6 out of 10. I think it could be good, and it has a lot of potential here, don't get me wrong. It's just that playing at turn 6 is a bit slow. But dealing 4 damage could work in some sort of spell damage burn shaman. Actually, you know what? No, I didn't even think about that. If you have the weapon equipped, this is going to be like 6 mana, deal 5, and then deal 3 to all other minions, or all enemy minions. And it specifically targets enemies, so it's actually a pretty decent card on that front as well. Like, this card's probably a solid 6.5. Just because it has some cool synergies I'm thinking of with some spell damage, especially if you get, like, a free spell damage card, right? With, what's it called? The Primordial Studies, and you get, like, say, the 1/3. I could see this card doing well because you play that for free. You play Dunk Tank as well. You do 5 damage to him and then deal 3 damage to everything, and it just becomes like the Starfall, but better. No, yeah, I think this card's like a 6 or maybe even a 7, actually, now that I think about it. Because you can also target a minion and do 6 damage to that minion and 2 damage to everything else, and it's basically like Starfall is in Quest Druid, which is a very powerful play. I'm going to say change my mind to a solid 7. I think it's a little bit slow, but definitely is good if you can last till turn 6. This one, Corrupt. When it gets corrupted, it becomes an 8/8 with Rush for 5 mana. But again, you'll probably not play this until turn 7. But a 7 mana, or a turn 7, 8/8 Rush minion that's corrupted and has some synergy with other stuff. Not to mention the fact that you still have 2 mana left over, so you can hero power potentially as well, or play an extra minion or something. Could be very, very strong. Not to mention the fact that, I don't know how this works, actually, because it gets corrupted and it becomes a whole new card. So if you pump this card up, say like in Biggin Druid, I think it loses the buff. So I was going to say this could be nuts, but I don't think it's as nuts. But it is a beast. So that means, say in like Hunter, or say in, I don't know. I was going to say Guardian Animals, but you want the effect off of this, so I don't really think it's going to be that good. I think it's going to be like a solid 6. I think it's fine. I think it's a common, especially in like Arena and stuff. It'll be super strong, but right now in Standard, I think the meta is just too fast and has too many high value things. Fortune Teller, Taunt, Battle Cry, gain +1/+1 for each spell in your hand. I think this card's fine. With all the randomly generated stuff Priest gets, for 5 mana, this guy can easily be like a 6/6 or better minion. Like, I could see this easily being, on average, having 4 or 5 spells in hand at any given time. Like a 7/7 or 8/8 for 5. You're not going to play it on turn 5, but it will be a good card just to like have and play 4-5 mana, similar to how this card will work. Because it's not the fact that, yes, it's coming out on a later turn, but it still only costs that 5 mana. So, that does mean that you have more mana to play with on a future turn. So I think Fortune Teller is a solid 6 out of 10 card again, maybe a little bit better than the Elephant, the Pearl Tusk, because it'll probably come out on turn 6. Like, you play the Cobalt Spellkin and then play Fortune Teller and minimum have it be a 5 mana 5/5 taunt, but most likely bigger. I think this card's pretty good. Not insane, but again, I might try to experiment with it. Corrupted, summon 5 Silverhand Recruits, but non-corrupted summon 3. For 3 mana, it's like a 3 mana 3/3 where you can split up some damage. It's more vulnerable to board clear, but it's less susceptible to single target removal, and cards that like randomly target certain things. So I'd say this card's probably a solid 7 again. I think this is a 7, just because Corrupted, it's pretty good. You can play this turn 5 for 3 mana 5 Silverhand Recruits. Not too shabby. It's not great, but it's not bad either. Luckily, there aren't any Silverhand Recruit like synergies, but if they come out with some this expansion, this card could easily be better than 7. Or if it gets no support at all, I could see this card being like, instead of a 7, more like a 6. But there needs to be some sort of support for this card to make to get plus out of the wide board that you get. And those are all of the cards that were just released right here. Boom. I hope you guys enjoyed. I enjoyed looking at all of these cards. I hadn't actually looked at these cards beforehand, except for the first one, because I loaded in and saw the first row, so I sneak peeked a little bit. But those are just my first initial reactions to all of these cards. And I think that these cards are cool. I really do. I think that they're trying to push to make the game slower with a lot of these 10 mana Old God cards. And they have a cool removal card with the Dunk Tank. Not to mention, these things will help deal with mid-range boards easier for Druid. So I think they're really trying to push aggro back a little bit and push for a later style of play, which personally I like a lot. So, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.